Welcome back to the Blog Boy Roundtable. We've got 5 of the 6 Blog Boys. This week, as always, is brought to you by the Bay Area Examiner. And from the Bay Area Examiner, you have myself, Seth Varnador, Anthony Vito, Robert Steig, Nathan Bond. And from DraftKings Network, we have Nick Simon. From DraftKings Network, not in attendance, we have Colin Sherwin. So it's week 0. We finally made it to almost to some actual football. We are going to pick the Navy Notre Dame game at the end, but it's kind of our last chance to do, the typical preseason stuff. We didn't want to go through every conference. We don't really have that much time. We're not trying to make these crazy long. So the assignment for everybody was pick one over, pick one under, pick one kind of dark horse conference champion, pick a Heisman Trophy winner, and then we're all going to pick the USF win total at the end. So we're going to start with the overs. We'll go around the horn here. Everybody's get a chance, kind of give your over, and if you have your reasoning. I'll go ahead and start. It may sound like a homer pick because it's one of the teams I cover, but I think I'm going to go Florida over 5.5. I think they'll make a bowl. They probably should have won 8 games last year. The USF win was kind of a fluke, but then they had a couple of fluke losses, so maybe that counteracts a little bit. But I think they're going to be better defensively. I think if they can stay healthy on offense, though, they could win 7. I only need them to win 6 to get it. So I'm going to go Florida over 5.5. Anybody have anything on that one?
Hard agree. This was in one of my overs that I would pick. I don't think Florida is as bad as this is. And I think there's a bit of, Graham Mertz is starting. He stinks. When that's probably not necessarily true. And it seems like Billy Napier is really, really good at moneying up playing muscle ball. So I think they're not going to be as bad as it seems. And I think Graham Mertz is actually going to work a little bit more than they think. I mean, maybe that means they still only win 6 games and go bowling, and that's still not up to Florida standards. But I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to ask him to do a ton. And if he can not turn the ball over, which might be a big if, I think they'll be all right. So I like that there. And then, I've seen a few other people that I think are pretty smart out there kind of be on that as well. So I feel pretty good there. All right, we'll go to.
I'll jump in because Florida was also my pick for this.
Okay.
I love Billy. He's a good coach. So it's really hard for me to fathom him not getting to a bowl game. Now, granted, it is a tough schedule. It is not fun. Going through the schedule, you can see the path to 4 wins, at Utah, and then you get McNeese, but then Tennessee, they're still going to be good. I don't think they're going to be last year good. I think everybody's probably in the same boat that they're not going to be last year good. Charlotte, then you got to go to Kentucky, Vandy, South Carolina, Georgia. It's a tough slate, and I'll feel really bad about it if they're at 5 wins and they've got to go beat Florida State. I'm going to be sweating bullets for that.
Yeah, I think the Utah game, and this could be one where if you kind of like the over, maybe just bet Utah, because if they win that, I think that's a really good swing. I'm not I've been watching Utah a little bit less. I'm not real big on Utah. I don't think they're athletic, at least defensively. So if Florida can do enough on offense in that game and Cam Rising doesn't play, which is possible, that's a big step towards that over. But if they have any injuries on the offensive line or quarterback, that's where you get that's where the bottom drops out, I think. So there's a little risk, but I think there's more upside. All right, so Nate and I are both in, right? Nate, you're in on that one? Over 5.5?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to Vito. Vito, I know you like that one. Was that your pick, or did you have something else?
I kind of had a top 3, and that was the second of my top 3. The first, and I didn't want to do anything that was super obvious, so I figured I'll do a team that I'm looking at that I think is going to be fun this year. Maryland over 7.5.
Ooh.
I think Talia Tagovailoa with his 5th year, I believe, and Mike Locksley's team. They start out with Towson, Charlotte, Virginia, all at home, their first 3 games. Then they go on the road to Michigan State and then return home for Indiana. That's 4 of their first 5 games at home, all beatable. They could go 5-0 going into the Ohio State game. So they play Ohio State on the road, but they do get Michigan and Penn State at home. But if you start out 5-0, you just have to beat Northwestern, Nebraska, and Rutgers, and then a toss up against probably a good Illinois team. I think they could be able to get to that 8-win plateau before that game against Michigan. So we'll see. They're 41st in SP plus, 44th on offense, 30th in defense. I think this should be a fun year, barring any injuries. I like that pick.
Yeah, I hadn't even been thinking about them, but you lay out that early season schedule. That seems like 5-0 is a good possibility there, right? So if you start out that way, then you feel really good about it.
This is one of those where you look at the schedule, like for Big Ten, like you're probably going to go 0-3 against the big 3 there. But just looking at the schedule, the win starts stacking up. That 7.5 almost scared me just because you have to get to 8. Yeah. And they could probably be in that 7 to 8 win margin. But just looking at the schedule, the games they get at home, I think it'll work out.
All right. Nick, let's go to you. What did you have for your over?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay in the state of Florida. I'm going to go Miami over 7.5. Basically, just not going too crazy here, but basically I think they can get to 8. Obviously last year was a mess with under Mario Cristobal in his first year, and I think they'll somewhat get things settled under control. They have a returning quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke. They have they kind of went hard in the transfer portal, as you would expect, kind of shored up some different positions, especially on the offensive line. And particularly what interests me is that they brought in Shannon Dawson, who was the offensive coordinator at Houston last year. And they brought him in. And so that's going to give Van Dyke an opportunity to really kind of throw the ball like all over the freaking field this year with some of the weapons that they have. You look at the schedule, obviously Florida State, Clemson, maybe North Carolina and NC State. You can North Carolina and Texas A&M. You can probably chalk those up as losses, but the ACC is still mediocre trash. Like we talked about it like before we got on air. So, you look at their schedule down the stretch. They start off with Bethune-Cookman, and then you're looking at it. It's a bunch of Georgia Techs and Virginias and Louisville with first year with Jeff Brom. They end the year with Boston College. The path is definitely there for the Hurricanes to get at least 8 wins this year.
And it seems like they're going to be pretty good on defense. I know they've got probably one of the better safety pairings in the country. I've seen that. They've got some good young defensive linemen, some good young offensive linemen, and then a couple guys transferred in. So, like you said, the middle to bottom of the ACC is not very good, and their out of conference schedule is Miami of Ohio, Texas A&M at home, which you'd think that would go to Texas A&M, but Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher may blow up on each other on the sideline. You never know. Then Bethune-Cookman and Temple. That's the rest of their out of conference schedule. And like Nick said, they got Georgia Tech, Virginia, Boston College. Who's you feel pretty good about those just on paper, and then you just got to win a couple more, and you're there. So, all right. I know Nathan's not a big Mario Cristobal fan. How do you feel about 7.5?
I don't see it. I don't think their quarterback situation is figured out, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. If you don't have a good quarterback in college football, you're going to be terrible. And Tyler Van Dyke ain't it.
He's had flashes of it.
He ain't it.
Not sustained enough for you.
Maybe
Jordan McLeod threw for like 400 yards against Central Florida and like threw for 6. I get, every dog has its day. But.
Flashes of it. Yeah. We'll see. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do at the skill positions. I'm not sure kind of what they brought in, but I know they're supposed to be pretty good up front, especially probably maybe one of the top O lines in the ACC. So they might be able to lean on people, which I think is what Mario wants to do, right? So, all right, last over. We're going to Stieg. Stieg, do you understand the assignment?
Not at all. Not even slightly. I am the most inept when it comes to betting odds. I have to beg and plead Colin sometimes to explain some things to me. So this all became a very fun exercise for me. So I made it fun. So my over pick this year, because I speak for the small schools, I speak for them often. University of Texas, El Paso, for a very specific reason. They have a really funny opening slate of their schedule. They start the year against Jacksonville State, then Incarnate Word, and then Northwestern, and then Arizona. There's a real possibility that this team is 2-2 to start the year, and their 2 wins are against FBS opponents in Power 5 conferences, and 2 losses are to essentially FCS schools. Knowing that Jacksonville State is going to be bumping up in a year. Anthony.
Do you know where Jacksonville State is located?
Alabama. Thank you.
Oh,
next question.
Okay.
You can't get me on that. I'm from Jacksonville. Florida,
that's right.
That is.
That's right.
And then I just think the rest of the conference is mediocre enough that they'll sneak through a win. They're always, for some odd reason, UTEP getting to 6 wins is always really, really likely. There's something in the water past that they're just able to just eke to 6 wins every year. So when I saw 5 for them, I was like, I think that's a little low for my minors there. So I'm with UTEP on my over.
All right, UTEP over 5.5. So UTEP to go bowling there. I think there's a lot of volatility in the CUSA. So,
right. I mean, you have like your guaranteed losses, right? Yeah, go on, Nick. You got this.
Oh no, there's like I said, like it kind of goes back. Like there's an opportunity there because you don't know like what this iteration of the CUSA is, or like who's exactly going to be the power program or whatever. And plus, like even over the past couple of years, like Dana Dimmel has done like for UTEP standards, like tremendous job there. You know, that program was dead in the water. It's like one of those dead in the water programs that he's somehow been able to like squeeze the life out of and get to a bowl game a few times. So it's spot on to pick them to go back bowling.
And using a friend of the show, Kelly Ford, his ratings, he's got UTEP basically Northwestern, Arizona, and Western Kentucky are the only 3 games he has more than a 7-point spread. Everything else is within a touchdown. A lot of them under a touchdown. So if they win the majority of those toss-ups, Steve, you'll be correct. So
every time there's conference realignment, especially on the lower end of these conferences, you always have a chance to kind of reassert yourself to where you are in the pecking order. And sometimes what you do in that first year can do a lot. So having a consistent coach like that, you never know that could be what they need to do.
All right, let's get to our unders. So we got 2. Nate and I have Florida over 5.5. Vito's got Maryland over 7.5. Nick has Miami over 7.5, and Stieg has UTEP, of course, over 5.5. Nathan, what is your under pick?
Looking through it, and looking through the list of these are all from DraftKings, our unofficial sports book of the Blog Boy Roundtable.
That's right.
One just jumped out at me like immediately, and I have no idea how people think Navy is going to get to 6.5 wins. Like it makes no sense to me. Like Navy has been horrific for quite a while, outside of the 2019 season when they went 11-2. So dating back to 2018, they went 3-10, 11-2, 3-7 that COVID year, and then back-to-back 4 and 8 years. Coach Ken gets fired. They promote within Brian Newberry, who was the defense coordinator, who defense did pretty well. That they hung with our Army last year, but that was probably the nail in the coffin, losing to Army once again. They did beat Central Florida. They hung tough with Notre Dame, and we'll get to that pick later. But, buddy, Keenan Reynolds is not walking through that door anytime soon. Malcolm Perry is not walking through that door. Like, I just don't see how in 2023 you're going to be running the triple. And I know they brought in Grant Chestnut from Kennesaw State to kind of change some things, but I don't think it's going to be enough to even in a pretty soft conference.
Yeah, so same guy, Kelly Ford's got their offense 115th going into the season. This is not the one that was a buzzsaw running through people. I think that's a really good pick. I didn't even see that one. But yeah, Notre Dame, that's going to be tough. And then they don't have the easiest draw. They don't get Tulane or UTSA. Maybe that's kind of why. But they get SMU, East Carolina, UAB, Temple, Charlotte, North Texas, and USF, and Memphis in conference. So, yeah, I think 6 wins would be a good season, and that's still under, right? So, I think that's a good one right there. All right, let's go to Vito.
So I'll just piggyback off of Nate. I saw that, but most of the unders I was trying to figure out that were to American conference teams. I have no idea what the heck's happening with this conference with the 6 that are coming up. So for all we know, Navy might be able to kind of blast through a couple of these games we think that they'll get run over in, and then that's all you need. That Central Florida win from last season and the bounce house, probably the funniest game of the year. They just turned on for one game. All they needed. One game. Okay, so my pick. I was looking, and I really wanted to choose like a Memphis, but again, I was just kind of afraid of what the American was. I think their over-under was 8, under 8, and that seemed way too high. But there was one that really popped out, and it's pretty contingent on conference realignment happening. Cal under 5. I looked at this and went, you know what? Sure, Cal is. You never really know what's going to happen. Justin Wilcox, can he pull a rabbit out of his hat? But then you look at this schedule, and it's pretty remarkable. So they get Oregon, Utah, and UCLA all on the road. So 3 or 4 of your top programs on the road, and then you get USC at home. But that's still 4 ranked Pac-12 teams you have to play, and your away slate is. I had to double check this at North Texas. So you're going to Denton, Texas on September 2nd at 4 p.m. Good luck with that. Then you travel home the next week to play Auburn, who should be better. Shout out Brian Battie. And then you get Idaho. If you're looking at this, Washington, Arizona State, Oregon State, Utah, USC, Oregon, Washington State. You don't even play you don't get a Colorado. You don't play any of the worst teams in the league. Maybe 2 wins on the schedule, unless they can kind of pull a rabbit out of their hat. Arizona State might be one. I don't know. Under 5 at plus 100 odds seemed pretty clear to me, and I just don't feel right about it. And they might get defeated after this, not having a home, and who knows what happens to Cal football. Aaron Rodgers ain't walking through that door.
Yeah, that's another one. I like that one too. They got some. Yeah, they did not get the bottom of the conference here. Washington, Oregon State, Utah, USC, Oregon, Washington State.
Getting 3 of the 4 ranked
Stanford
teams on the
UCLA
road
too. Yeah,
that's what kills me. Like how did Cal get this slate? Wow.
Yeah, no, it does not look pretty. I think you maybe feel good about Arizona State and maybe Washington State because they're at home, but outside of that, and Stanford's pretty bad. But maybe the band could come back on the field, and who knows what happens there. So, I like that. I think that makes sense. All right, we'll go to Nick. Nick, who are you a little down on this? Who do you think is going to go under?
So at minus 120, it's kind of popular. It's kind of a popular pick, but I'm still going to choose it. Oklahoma under 9.5. Oklahoma went 6-7 in Brent Venables' first season last year. It's their first losing season since 1998. And a huge reason why is their defense was atrocious, like really bad. Not USF bad, but really bad. Like, if you remember back to October, there was that 2-week stretch where they get embarrassed by Texas, or no, they get embarrassed by TCU, which that was kind of TCU's launching point. And then the next week, they just get absolutely hammered by Texas. And a huge reason for that is Ted Roof was their defensive coordinator. I was looking this up. Ted Roof is still there. He's like Venables taking the Clemson model of we're just going to hunker down and like keep our assistants in the band together. They still have Ted Roof there and didn't make any significant additions to their defense. Listen, Dylan Gabriel was good. Dylan Gabriel was good last year when he was healthy. They're going to have to score like 67 points a game to have a shot at winning 12 this year. They're going to get into a lot of shootouts and just they're just going to have to get into a lot of shootouts straight up, and them going from 6 wins to 10 wins. I just don't see it with them. I'm really down on Oklahoma. I'm really down on that entire program as they transition into an even tougher, infinitely tougher league next year. It's going to get ugly.
Yeah, what about what's kind of gives you pause on the anything, or you think it's just going to be it's going to be way under? Is there what would kind of you think be the reason they go? Because I think on one hand their schedules they got a pretty good draw through the Big 12, but do you think it's just like 9.5 is a lot?
Yeah, 9.5 is a lot, and they do have a good draw in the Big 12, but the Big 12 can be really squirrely. It can be pretty wacky and like cutthroat down the stretch with just teams knocking each other off, especially in October, November. And 9.5 is just 9.5 is just way too much for them.
Yeah, I think they got 3 of the newbies on schedule, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, on the way out, the only one they didn't get was Houston, which would have been interesting, but yeah.
Hey, Seth and Nick, they get 4 American Athletic Conference programs. They play SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, and UCF.
There you go. Yeah. The SMU game could be, if SMU's on and that defense isn't ready, that could be a sneaky game right there. Early.
Oh, that could be like SMU Houston on that Halloween weekend that was like 70-60. That game was awesome.
Yeah, that could be a sneaky one there. All right, let's go. Stieg. Under.
That means less than the number, right?
Yes. You think they're going to win less than the number? Yeah.
So I was going to go with, I think is kind of like a safe one right now, aside from Navy, and I wanted to kind of divvy out of the AAC. I was going to go with UAB for no other reason than I can't justify the Trent Dilfer experience working. I mean, he could end up being really good, but I don't. That translation from a okay high school program in Tennessee to a Division I borderline group, or a pretty good group of 5 teams, I can't see it. But I wanted to go a little different, a little off the rails here, and just see if this works. I had under on TCU.
Oh.
I think they were at 7.5, 7. And for no other reason than I think they have a brutal into their schedule. I think they're going to have a really, really bad post college football. I don't even want to call it an appearance. Their name was listed in the college football playoff finals, but I don't feel like they reloaded recruiting wise. It just seems like they just, all right, fine. And then you have a lot of teams that are going to try to get up at them. You have Colorado, who we don't know how that's going to be. I mean, truthfully, like, there's pretty good assumption that Colorado is probably not going to be very good, but there's a chance they can come out on fire. Deion Sanders is Deion Sanders. You get SMU, and probably the last time that the Iron Skillet's going to be playing.
Well, that's going to be a heated one, right?
And that's heated.
That's going to be hot this year.
If SMU can put up 70 on TCU, they will. They get a fairly favorable couple of games in the middle. Like, there's a chance they could start off the year 3-0. They have Nicholls State and Houston to kind of round out their first 3 games. Colorado, and then they have West Virginia as well. But like, I don't love the back half of their schedule. I think they might get to like 5-2, and then just taper off. You're ending the year BYU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Texas, and Baylor. And
Yeah.
I can see that falling off the map really quick.
That's a strong last 5, right? That's probably the top. I would think that's the top 5 in odds for the conference. Outside of them, yeah, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Baylor, and TCU's 5th out of those 6. So, yeah, that's a tough end right there. So
I think they can get to 6, and I think it might. I think there's a very good chance they get to 6-6, and that's it. I think I don't like what they've built there. I don't think that there's any, like, you were in the college football playoff championship last year, and there's zero momentum happening in Fort Worth right now.
Yeah, that'll be the one thing that'll be interesting is that the quarterback was actually starting before Max Duggan, then he got hurt. That'll be interesting to see maybe why he was the guy, right? Is it Chandler Morris? Chad Morris is his name, Chandler. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. Did the coaches just screw it up and Duggan should have been the guy all along, or is Morris a guy that can do things? And they're breaking in a different offense, and yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. So
I'm telling Parker.
Yeah, that's what you really want to do. You're lashing out at Parker because he said USF's defense was really bad in the Echo rate. So Nate actually mentioned this team earlier. I'm going to go Tennessee under 9.5. I don't trust Joe Milton yet. You got to see it. I think the last time he played extended minutes was at Michigan, and he was like a 57% passer. Now they obviously asked him to do for different things, but I think the Tennessee defense is not very good. They could obviously improve, but I don't think they're going to win at Alabama. I don't think they're beating Georgia, and then they just got to stumble one more time, which last year they were make the playoff, and then they go to South Carolina and just get blown out. I don't think Heupel's a guy. Do we think Heupel's a guy that's not prone to having a stumble here or there in his career? So I just think there's 2 they're probably going to lose. I would put it at pretty good odds. They're going to lose Georgia and Alabama, and then I just got to get them to stumble one more place, and I think they will. I just don't think they're going to be consistent enough. And they lost a lot from their best team in a long time. So I'm going to go under 9.5 on Tennessee. Vito, I thought you had a little shocked face there. Is that surprising to you, or
did you not see Joe the Cannon Milton torch Clemson's defense in the Orange Bowl near Christmas?
I did.
I was watching that game at a nice little pub called Berry House in Ybor. It was very fun to watch. 2 orange teams that should have had orange uniforms in it. I like what Tennessee was last year, and I'm afraid that was a last year only thing, and it makes me sad because they were fun. And Jalen Hyatt looks like the real deal so far in Giants camp.
Him and Tillman's having a really good camp too. I think he's with so good for
much
USF.
for that Mickey Mouse offense.
Yeah, good for USF and Coach Golish's recruiting. But yeah, I'm just kind of trying to catch him down. I don't know. Milton could come out and light the world on fire, and we'll talk about Heisman here in a second. He could be a guy that if he just goes nuts with his raw talent, maybe he's putting up crazy numbers. But I'm gonna bet on them slipping up there. So
it's a high number. It's a high number.
9.5.
That's high for SEC. Yeah.
3 losses. Yeah, just three. They lose 3 games, which I think they're kind of guaranteed to lose 2. But you never know. Alabama, who knows what they're going. But I think at home they'll probably pull it out. All right, so let's go to conference dark horses. So this is another one you could pick anybody you wanted. Just as long as they weren't in the top 2 odds in the conference. So I'll get us started here, and I don't know if anybody else is with me on this one. And this is another one that I thought was a really interesting over pick potentially. Their over under was at 7.5, and I was surprised to see them 3rd in the odds for the American. I'm going to go UTSA as kind of.
Seth, we are just simpatico, brother. I saw that and started chuckling. I was like, "Oh man, this is going to be such a cop out because they are technically 3rd."
Yeah,
they seem so good.
I think their schedule is not I also thought about them for over 7.5 because their schedule is not crazy difficult. It's really a lot of it is, do you think they can beat Houston to start the year? I think they got a chance, right? Like, that doesn't seem crazy, right?
Yeah, it really just boils down to what kind of Dana we're getting, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a
Here's
crapshoot in and of itself.
Here's their conference schedule: Temple, UAB, FAU, ECU, North Texas, Rice, USF, and at Tulane. I wouldn't be shocked if they, won all but Tulane.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be. I don't think that'd be a big surprise. So then they're likely in the game. So
I could see them sleepwalking to 6 conference wins easy.
because they have a lot of the same opponents as last year. They're not really getting the full brunt of the American here.
No, the only game that they probably for sure won't win is Tennessee. Like that's just, I think there's still a skill gap there. They're very talented, but there's still a skill gap.
Yeah.
Army, they're changing things up, but I still think they've got a lot more talent and more speed. I mean, this is like a 9-10 win team. I don't understand why they're.
I think so too.
They're
That's why
so
I almost went. They're 7.5 over, and I almost went with them for that. Anybody else have UTSA? They not have UTSA as our conference dark horse. Anybody else have UTSA?
I stayed away from the American, but I mean UTSA not being. Everyone's kind of putting Tulane as the favorite, and I get it, but they lost a generational running back. UTSA returns most of everybody, and they have probably the best coach in the league, who's going to be you also get that when you kind of get elevated, you kind of get that I don't know, maybe it's just me, but you get that little motivation, like, hey, we got called up to a bigger league, let's go ahead and show them we belong, and then you're playing most of the same programs anyway, so.
Yeah, they have kind of a split in the conference schedule, it seems like, where they're still playing a ton of the same teams they've been beating on the last couple of years. Interesting that SMU kind of jumped them. Now, I think part of that is because they don't play UTSA or Tulane in conference this year in the regular season. So people feel like they'll get to the to have a good chance to get to that conference championship game. And then once you're there, you can't win it unless you're there, right? So, Vito, let's go back to you. Who did you have as your dark horse conference champion?
So I went back out west again to the Pac-12. Give me Oregon State. I am really high on this team, and I think based on what they've been doing, and now they have a pretty high ranking, but they're I dropped it out. Hold on one second. Oregon State's like we're talking about the offense. You bring in DJ Uiagalelei to see if he can kind of give a career renaissance from Clemson. So you get a veteran over there. They got one of the top offensive lines in the nation returning, and they have a defense that is actually improving year over year. So I get that they got 10 wins last year, but it seems like this year with what USC, Oregon, Washington, Utah are getting like kind of all the preseason buzz with their quarterbacks. Oregon State can also can go ahead and do the funniest thing ever and make this a complete revenge year and just obliterate everybody en route to the Pac-12 championships while they're flipping flipping the bird to everybody else around them, going like, hey, guess what? Guess who's the best team around? And Jonathan Smith may then leave at that point, but who knows? I think they're bound.
He's really good. I think they're tough, and their offense is quarterback friendly. And the schedule's not. You got Utah, UCLA, Washington. Those are 3 tough ones, but they're all at home. Really, your toughest game is at Oregon to end the year, but it's a pretty manageable schedule outside of that. If you can steal a couple of those tougher home games, then you've got a great chance, I think, to get to the title game. So I like the Beavers. All right, Steeg, we're going to go to you. Not last this time. So
not last. I expect you to be last. I messed up. I thought you said as long as they're not the favorite, not top 2 favorite.
Top two.
I was like,
we changed it up. Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the team that I actually had as my backup, which was Penn State. I know that sound kind of weird, I think, knowing what I am about myself. But I don't know. I feel like there's a time that's put it together to compete in that absolutely brutal division that they're placed in. I think this is their time to do it. I think that Ohio State is extremely talented, as they always are. Spoiler alert to my Heisman pick. But I think they're prone to just trip over themselves at any point. Everyone's high on Michigan. I never believe in Michigan, and I never will. So I think this is the time that Penn State can kind of swoop in there, get that well-earned, well-deserved, long time coming conference championship in the Big Ten.
I like that.
Against some Shabroni West Division team that's terrible.
Iowa, you're
Nebraska or
going
something.
down.
Yeah,
I like that one a lot, Steve. I think they're super talented. If UTSA wasn't there, that's probably going to be my pick, was Penn State, just because I think there might be some knockdown dragouts with Michigan and Ohio State this year. So whichever team out of that division makes the game is probably winning it, right? So, all right, Nick, who do you got for your dark horse conference champion?
They shouldn't even really be a dark horse, but we kind of keep overlooking them. I'm going to go out west for the three-peat in the Pac-12 with Utah. You know, everyone's paying attention. You know, everyone's talking about USC, Washington, Oregon. Great. But there's still, like, you're still talking about the two-time defending champion of the conference with one of the most underrated coaches in all of college football, and Kyle Whittingham. And I'm looking it up. Utah in the preseason SP Plus rankings, they're number 14, and they're pretty balanced heading into the season. You know, number 12 in offense, number 26 in defense. And I don't know, man. It's just like once it hits November, that team just gets really mean, and they just start bullying all the teams people think is going to win the Pac-12, and this could very much be another case of that, especially with Cameron Rising coming back at quarterback. So I'm just inclined to continue to think Utah will just steamroll someone and just completely punk someone in the Pac-12 title game until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I'm doing prep for that Utah Florida game. If you look at their splits inside of the conference, they just bully that. I think they've built themselves just to be a bully in conference. I think that's kind of what Oregon State, Vito's pick, is trying to do too. But Utah, I think, is the blueprint they're following, where you build yourself to bully all these teams that want to spread you out and throw it. They're just going to bully you, and they've got the dudes to do it in conference. So I think it's definitely a viable option there. All right, so this one's somewhat correlated to who you think is going to be really good and have a chance at the playoff, I guess. But let's go Heisman picks. We'll start with Vito this time. Vito, who did you throw out for your Heisman? We didn't put any caveats here. You could pick Caleb Williams, I guess, but that's not as much fun, right? I think you're muted, Vito.
I'm muted, man. This keeps happening to me. Caleb Williams is kind of the sexy pick, the reigning champion. But when's the last time someone's won back to back? I don't remember. So I was like, let's go somewhere different. And I kind of went, I'm going to stay within the Pac-12 because I do think they have the best quarterbacks. And you're in a year where the SEC is reloading quarterbacks. So maybe things change a little bit. I'm going to go with Washington and Michael Penix Jr. because he is from Tampa, Florida, and most of us are from here. But he, broke a ton of records at Washington, put up 4,600 yards, 31 touchdowns, 65 completion percentage, and went nuclear on some teams, like putting 51 points up against Washington State, 54 against Colorado, beating Oregon State. I think if he puts up another year like that, he might get an invite to New York. 65% completion percentage. I have a colleague who's a huge Washington fan, and he just could not believe the type of numbers Michael Penix Jr. was putting up, and continues to. And I also think he's a dark horse candidate for the Bucks. So that is my my Heisman hopeful.
Anybody else go with Michael Penix Jr.? They're returning some stud receivers too, and they have a really good offensive-minded coach. Alabama tried to steal their OC. He's definitely got a lot going for him. All right, we'll go to Nick. Nick, where did you go for your Heisman pick?
So I do actually think that there's a strong chance that Caleb could go back to back. The first back-to-back winner since Archie Griffin in the 70s. But again, that's boring. We know like Caleb Williams is incredible. Like we all know that. Like he's gonna be at the very least at the ceremony in December, barring injury. I kind of went not necessarily off the radar, but with just kind of a dark horse guy, and kind of directly tying into what Stieg just said about Penn State. I'm gonna choose Drew Aller as my like dark horse guy. Sophomore quarterback at Penn State. He was this incredible 5-star kid coming out of high school. I was looking it up. He was he's basically the highest rated quarterback James Franklin has gotten to Penn State, period, during his run in Happy Valley. Sat behind Sean Clifford last year. A lot of people were clamoring for Franklin to pull the trigger and bench Clifford for Aller, but he still stayed put and had the freshman sit down, get his garbage time reps and everything like that. Like Stieg, I'm really bullish on Penn State's chances of actually breaking through into that Ohio State, Michigan tier in the Big Ten and win and like actually have a chance at winning the conference. And I think Aller will be a huge part of that. I think he's going to really like open the offense up and like really turn some heads as a sophomore this year. And I think if he wins like one or maybe even both of those games against Ohio State or Michigan, he's definitely like automatic for New York City. So yeah, so invest in Drew Aller stock.
Yeah, I like that one. I think he had to come in like the game one for Clifford for a little bit, and he threw just a laser beam over the middle of the field. I was like, this dude is a different animal compared to Sean Clifford. So he's definitely got those physical skills.
I do feel bad for him. Sorry, Steve, I just got to jump on this. I do feel bad for him because everyone's really high in Drew Aller and saying Penn State could be a playoff contender, win the Big Ten. And it's always with the caveat of, if Drew Aller is as advertised, I'm like, man, that's a lot of pressure. Can you imagine? They're like, everyone's expecting me to live up to this hype. And if I don't, I ruined it for everybody. So feel bad for him, but looking forward to it.
No pressure, Drew. Stieg, I'm interested to see where you go here.
Oh man, you're interested in me. I'm tired of quarterbacks winning the Heisman Trophy. I think it's stupid. I think it's dumb. Give it to the best playmaker. Give it to the guy that makes the biggest difference. Give it to the guy that's probably going to be the best pro. Marvin Harrison Jr. is ridiculously good. Last year, I was really big. I cannot remember JSN. I cannot remember his full name. I was a huge fan of him. I thought he was going to be like the next generational Ohio State
Jackson Smith
receiver.
Something. Right?
Yeah, it's something like that. I was like, he might be a guy that like might, be like Devontae Smith and win the Heisman, and then it gets injured game one. So I'm going to knock on wood and say it and hope that Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't get injured game one. I think obviously he has the name that goes along with it. I think like I said earlier, that Ohio State offense
what are you talking about?
Elite.
What name are you talking about?
Sorry, what?
This is an internet thing. So keep going, Steve.
I'm very okay, but yeah, regardless.
He picked a kicker.
Yeah.
I'm thrown off now because I don't know what Nate's referencing, so I'm going to shut up before I say something stupid.
If somebody, let's say a guy that played in the NFL had that name. Let's say he was very unassuming, and then let's say something very violent happened, and he was somewhat associated with it.
Oh yeah,
and let's
right.
say people didn't want to mention his name just to not come under his ire. Let's say all those things, hypothetically, all those things happen.
Had a car wash.
Hypothetically,
hypothetically, nobody mentions his name. He's redacted.
hypothetically, Marvin Harrison Jr. for like a dumb amount, like 1,900 receiving yards and like 36 touchdowns. Because that offense is going to run through them.
Yeah, he's high up there on the odds board. So,
and Trayvon Henderson is also up there on Ohio State. So I mean, but I think it's a receiver's time to shine. I think there's a lot of talent at the top for quarterbacks. I don't think anyone's going to separate it. Might as well give it to the best playmaker.
All right, Nate, who do you got?
It's my turn, huh? All right. So I've loved this guy since last year. I thought he was like an absolute star, and I was proven right. And I think this is the year if Florida State is going to claim that they're going to be back and they're going to be in title contention, it's because of Jordan Travis. He is my pick. He's at plus 1,400 right now, which puts him tied for fourth with Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck. Two quarterbacks could not be like further on the experience. Hey, this guy's actually proven to be good at college football than those two folks. I don't trust Jaden Daniels. We talked about it last week, and then I saw I think it was CFP Stats put out something today that he was the most sacked quarterback under pressure last season, and I don't believe Quinn Ewers either. Like it's really between Caleb and Jordan Travis, and I'm going to pick Jordan Travis all day, every day. I think he's got the talent to be, I guess, the quote unquote dark horse to unseat Caleb Williams at least.
Yeah, if he keeps kind of incrementally improving like he has been, they'll be really good. And they got a really good offense, really good weapons around him. I think he's definitely within the realm of possibility. I'm actually going to go with a different team in the ACC. But I don't think I'm going to go maybe with the guy you think. I'm going to go with Clemson. I'm going to go Will Shipley. I
like
think
that.
if they're really good, he's probably going to get a bunch of touches in a bunch of different ways. Klubnik, it's his first year kind of being the guy in this offense. I just think Shipley does a bunch of – they'll throw him the ball. He'll get it on runs. I think he's been their best player offensively the last couple of years, and he's a guy they'll want to feature. So if Clemson – I think Clemson's going to make the playoff. Their schedule – if they get past Florida State, their schedule is really not – it's basically Florida State and Notre Dame are kind of the big two games for them, and then revenge against South Carolina. But I don't think South Carolina is going to be great. So if the offense gets it figured out, I think he's a guy that will have a really good year. And if you're on a really good team and have a really good year, you got a shot to get there. So I'm going to go with Will Shipley. He's I think he's plus 6,000. So a little bit of a longer shot, but
And they still have divisions, right? So you don't have to face Florida State again. You face.
no, I think they could play again, right?
Oh, it is top two. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
they cut the divisions this year. So rest in peace to the ACC Coastal, Indy Atlantic.
Thank goodness, probably. Anyway, it's Florida State. I love it when talking about the ACC. It's like it's Florida State, Clemson, and a bunch of mid.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson's schedule is they play Duke, Charleston Southern, FAU, and then FSU is their first four. If they beat Florida State, it's basically after that Syracuse, Wake, Miami, NC State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, South Carolina.
FSU and Clemson is super early this year. I always remember that being like Halloween, mid-October.
Yeah, it's Florida State's like in the driver's seat or out of contention by the time we hit October, which will be really interesting to see kind of where they go. So looks like we lost Stieg. I'm not sure it was more momentarily or longer, but we'll keep trucking. We got his picks, but we'll go to USF real quick. Let's go. USF is at 4, I believe, on DraftKings. I believe they're over under set at 4. Nate, where are you going?
I think it's a push, and if I have to pick over under 4, it's under. I don't. You're bad until you prove to me that you're not bad.
Vito.
So I look at this and it's like, we run a USF site and there's a lot of just trying to put the bar where you're not setting the expectation too high. If I'm just looking at this on the outside and it's looking at what's over under 4 and the over is minus 130, I would probably say over. And I just look at this you look at the new teams you're playing and you look at you won one game last year, but you did play some tough ones. You just you were very inconsistent. I look at the schedule and I would say over 4. As a USF fan, I'm like, look, there's so much, bad karma by thinking that, but looking at the schedule and the talent that they brought in with the new coach, you think that they're not going to mess up their timeouts. You think they're going to figure that out. And 4 is just knowing this program or seeing this program where it is with the newcomers. I would say over 4.
Nick, where are you at? Are you with Nate or are you with Vito?
Nate said literally almost verbatim everything that I was gonna say. I think it's gonna be right at 4, but if I had to lean either way, I'm just leaning under. Like you said, you're bad until you're not. And okay. I can imagine, I'm looking at the schedule. I can imagine that unlike in years past, knock on wood, that at least by the end of the season, he's gonna have those kids. He's gonna have those kids playing hard, and he's gonna you can imagine. I can even imagine where a scenario where, say, November 17th against UTSA, they're not gonna win that game, but Friday night, you're not. By this point, you're knocked out of bowl eligibility. Screw it. You're gonna put a you could put a scare into them for 3 quarters or whatever. But again, you're a bad program. You just have to go out and prove. You have to go out and prove it. That's the thing. And until you go out and actually prove it, you just hit the under for this program, man.
Yeah, I think 4 is the right number. But I'm with Vito. I'm gonna go over. The schedule's really bad. It's
we can get into this a little bit more, but just looking at the talent discrepancy, at least in this year, and we've been marred with a lot of just how did you lose this game? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Terrible luck, terrible coaching, terrible whatever. But you're telling me you can't beat FAMU, Rice, Charlotte, Temple at home? That's 4.
I mean,
if you're not winning those, then you're really setting that bar super low. And that's, when we're trying to cover the program, we talk about it a little bit, but that's your 4. You're not winning those. Once you start kind of playing that game, you go, man, if you lose those 4, then the other ones that are at UAB, Trent Dilfer, at UConn, 8-game win streak, at Florida Atlantic, they're tough.
That's what, if I told you before the season, Navy's offense is going to be terrible and UAB is going to be awful under Dilfer, it wouldn't be shocking, right? So there's a way the schedule breaks where they go over. I think I wouldn't say it's not going to be easy because, like you said, you got to prove it. But there's definitely a scenario where they go over, and they might be at 4 super early, and then have to sweat it out the rest of the way. But yeah, I just think the schedule is really bad. 11th schedule in the conference. It's not bad. You could win 5.
In your top 4?
I think 4. I think 4 is a really good number.
You just have to you have to prove it.
Yes,
you have to step up and we haven't seen this in over 5 years now. You have to step up and actually prove it.
But I think the funny thing, we kind of chatted about if you somehow beat Western Kentucky in game 1, you just probably gave yourself a bunch of rocket fuel, because what might happen is you lose to Western Kentucky by a lot because Austin Reed's amazing. You beat FAMU by whatever. You get blown out by Alabama, and then that ruins your next game. And then JT Daniels turns it on for Rice, and all of a sudden you're sweating that one out. It's one of those how many bad luck scenarios could you get?
Then your butthole's puckered if you're losing.
Yeah, then at that point you go, okay. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And this is just me from an independent. If I'm just looking at 4 is the USF number. Wow. Okay, you're playing a lot of CUSA teams. You should have a talent advantage. We'll see. Now, again, as a USF fan, I'm like, don't get excited. Don't get excited until they're at 5 wins. Then at that point, then go, oh, maybe we have something. But just from an outside perspective.
And hopefully you can get that injury luck turned back. Last year it was against you. It's been against you for the last couple of years. Hopefully if you get some good injury luck, you got a shot, but who knows? All right. Real quick, because we've gone a little longer than we are typically going to. There was a lot to get in. Navy Notre Dame. Quick pick. This one's not going to count on our record, but it's week 0. It's the first week of games. We got to pick one of them. All right. So Navy is a 20.5 point underdog. The total sits at 50.5. Nick, you got to pull. What's your play here if you had to pick one? This won't be on our totals here because it's. But we got to pick one game, right?
So there could be funkiness with them. Like it's a week 0 game. It's the first game out the gate. They're in Ireland. Are they in Ireland? They're in Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're in Ireland. Yeah, so there's a lot of weirdness that can happen. But again, like the talent discrepancy between Notre Dame and Navy is like astronomical. Just hammer it with Notre Dame. Like don't even think about it. Just hammer it with Notre Dame. This is going to be ugly. Like this is going to be ugly in both like a watching experience and like the final score.
And they're gonna want to let Hartman. They're gonna let him do his thing a little bit, right? You'd think. So they're gonna be throwing the ball around. You'd think generating much of explosive plays. Yeah, it's a lot of points, but I'm gonna take Notre Dame as well. Nathan, where do you sit on this one?
Yeah, I'm not going against my underpick. It's Notre Dame's going to smoke them. I don't trust Navy as far as I can throw them. And the weird thing about how they shuffled everything, like it's still a lot of the same coaches from the previous staff. They just fired the head coach. Like either do a complete rebuild or do nothing at all. You make no sense, Navy.
I veto. Is it a Notre Dame sweep or are you a Patriot?
Really hate how the way the whole Coach Ken thing went down. I feel like what's the number? Is it 20
and a half? 20 and a half.
That's a lot. But I mean, Notre Dame's in Ireland. They're the fight. I feel like you're going to get some like ancestral, grit here. This is first game under a new coaching staff. I think Notre Dame does this, and I think they need to prove that Sam Hartman can run the offense. It's just one of those things. If for whatever reason the triple option is working and they're doing long drives and scoring touchdowns, that's when it just changes the whole game. Because if you start getting tired on defense,
I'm sure Freeman saw Navy at Cincinnati at least once, right? So
yeah,
it won't be totally foreign to him. The triple. Now maybe there'll be some new wrinkles with the new coaches, like Nate mentioned earlier in the pod, but we shall see. All right, so everyone's got Notre Dame. We actually have games this weekend to watch. It should be fun. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on another edition of the Blog Boy Roundtable. We'll be back next week this was just like USF. This was kind of our mock game week. Next week, we got a real game week. We'll pick a few games, preview a couple, and get it going. But football season's basically here. So we did it. Look at us.
Let's get it.
All right. Thank you, boys.
let's go.
We'll see you guys next week.